Back in the 80s, my first Transformer was the blue F-15 jet named Thundercracker. My friend, who lived across the street, had a red Lamborghini named Sideswipe. And every chance he got, he would remind me that according to the official cartoon that he just watched, his car, the good guy, shot down my jet, who was the bad guy. Of course, the first thing I did was to get a then pirated copy of the show to see if what he was saying was true. And as it turned out, he was only partially correct. My jet was indeed a bad guy and was shot down. But not by his guy. It was his twin brother Sunstreaker that actually did the deed. So there. Ever since I proved that my friend was a liar, despite him, I decided then and there that my favorite Autobot would be the superior Lamborghini brother, Sunstreaker. To be fair, in my eyes, he did look cooler. He didn't transform into your typical Lamborghini, but a modified version with huge exhausts sticking out from his back. Now I understand to car experts such a contraption could ultimately ruin the streamlined shape of the car, but to a kid, they looked like cool back-mounted jet exhausts or additional weapons which made him look even more formidable. Unfortunately, as a kid, I never did get myself a Sunstreaker toy. My older sister, who lived in New York back in the 80s, claimed she saw him in a store in Chinatown. So when I visited her one summer, she had her then boyfriend take me there to hunt him down. No luck. Instead, I ended up with Brawn, Bumblebee, Ravage, and Laserbeak. Oh well. Not finding him was probably all the better though, because as far as G1 Transformers toys go, he was one of the uglier ones, with ape-like arms and an oversized head. But despite him being a rather wonky toy, I still loved the guy. A few years later, I would get to know Sunstreaker a little better by reading his bio that came with the toy. Since I couldn't get the toys myself, I would just lift off the tech specs from some of my more fortunate and generous friends. Now I've said this over and over again, but one of the main reasons that the Transformers as a cartoon and a toy line was such a runaway success while other similar toys failed was the strength of their characters. They weren't just cookie-cutter good guys and bad guys. Thanks to writers, most notably Bob Budiansky, who wrote the toy bios in early comics, we didn't just get battling robots, but very nuanced characters with unique personalities, complete with their own quirks and imperfections. Take Sunstreaker's bio for example. Sunstreaker knows to the core of his spark that he is better than any other Autobot, and he makes sure everyone else knows it too. His sociopathic tendencies, combined with his incredible vanity and arrogance, usually result in tension between himself and the other Autobots. He is generally unwilling to help those who are having trouble keeping up, and is quite audible when it comes to complaining about the shortcomings of everyone else. The only Autobot he truly gets along with is his twin brother, Sideswipe, and even that can seem strained at times. The main reason Optimus Prime keeps him around is most likely Sunstreaker's effectiveness in the battlefield. Ruthless and skilled in all forms of combat, there is not much Sunstreaker cannot handle. As a frontline warrior, Sunstreaker is a great asset for the Autobot army, if a rather scary one. Now I don't know about you, but words and phrases like sociopathic tendencies, incredible vanity, arrogance and unwillingness to help others aren't the first characteristics I would think of when describing a good guy. But there you have it. Sunstreaker is an Autobot, and not just any Autobot, but one whose ruthless effectiveness on the battlefield is such a great asset that his teammates and leader are willing to overlook the fact that he is truly a bona fide a-hole. And not that I like jerks in general, but it all adds up to a more interestingly realistic character that I as a kid found cool. Now Sunstreaker was rarely featured in the cartoon, but when he was, alongside his brother, it was usually during some cool action sequence. Like when they came to the rescue of a fellow Autobot, the aforementioned scene where Sunstreaker shoots down Thundercracker, or riding the backs of some Decepticon jets attempting to perform their specialized jet judo attacks on them. He didn't fare any better in the early Marvel comics either, as he was usually overshadowed by his more popular teammates like Ironhide, Prowl, and Jazz. Hell, thanks to the live-action movies, even his twin brother Sideswipe has gotten more exposure. I guess it doesn't help that Sunstreaker shared the same color as arguably one of the most iconic Transformers, Bumblebee. As in later shows, to avoid confusing kids I guess, there seemed to be only room for one yellow Autobot. Fortunately, when the comic company IDW acquired the Transformers publishing license in 2005, Sunstreaker was placed at the center of two of the most compelling storylines that significantly fleshed out what was first established in his tech specs and took him through a roller coaster ride of rich character development and growth, making him, in my most unbiased opinion, one of the most memorable Transformers from the entire IDW continuity run. It all starts with Sunstreaker being one of the few Autobots initially featured in the first Transformers miniseries called Infiltration. Unlike the original cartoon and comics, wherein the Transformers accidentally crash into a volcano millions of years ago and are revived during modern times, IDW started their series with both factions of Transformers arriving on Earth deliberately, but secretly, with the Decepticons looking to expand their reach and the Autobots in step to keep them in check. So as it goes, Sunstreaker is part of the first small Autobot infiltration team led by Prowl. As the series progresses, it is revealed that the Autobots' arrival on Earth is not as secret as they had hoped it would be. And unknown to them, they themselves were being monitored by a special human organization called the Machination, who were aware of their existence. And eventually, when this organization made their move, Sunstreaker was the unfortunate target of this first strike. During an Autobot covert ops mission, so he was taking a human ally named Hunter home. The Machination ambushed Sunstreaker and seemingly destroyed him. But this was just what they wanted the Autobots to think. Instead of being destroyed though, Sunstreaker was whisked away to the Machination's secret headquarters where he was decapitated, dissected, and reverse engineered to produce Sunstreaker clones. His ally Hunter didn't fare any better as he was used as a guinea pig for their headmaster program, which basically enabled humans to transform into Transformer heads and merge with the clone bodies and control them. The exact details are kinda sketchy now since it's been a while since I read all this, but for some reason the original Sunstreaker head had to be kept alive with all its clones linked to him in order to survive. Now, if being decapitated and made into some central living brain wasn't bad enough, for the ultimate egotist who prides himself at being unique, having your body cloned just adds insult to injury. In the end, working together, both Sunstreaker and Hunter managed to escape and bring down the entire Machination operation, along with all the Sunstreaker clones. Of course, in order to do this, Sunstreaker had to accept Hunter as his headmaster, bonding the two for the foreseeable future. Now, for most Autobots, being a headmaster would be a cool thing. You get the best of both robot and human worlds. For Sunstreaker though, who basically looked down at humans as lesser beings, being bonded to one basically sucked. As the series writer Simon Furman put it, he specifically chose Sunstreaker for this story arc because he figured that he was the least likely to want to be a headmaster. In the end though, the Autobots are able to reverse the process, and Sunstreaker gets his original head and body back together, and everyone is happy. Or so we thought. Fast forward a few years later in the next major storyline called All Hail Megatron. There is a major flip within the status quo, dropping the whole secretive robots in disguise approach of the prior years. The Decepticons have flat out taken over the Earth, after destroying cities and killing thousands of humans in the process. Of course, their success basically means that the Autobots have been defeated and have been exiled onto a dead Cybertron with their leader Optimus Prime clinging to life himself. It turns out that the Autobots got themselves in this dire situation because they were betrayed by one of their own, and the identity of the traitor is the big mystery that they have been trying to figure out. After throwing us a red herring in the form of the usual suspect, Mirage, it is finally revealed that Sunstreaker is the traitor. Now, what made this turn of events great was not that they fooled us into thinking that the traitor was Mirage, but that Sunstreaker had the perfect motive for betraying his friends. As it turned out, his experience back on Earth of being violated and experimented on by humans against his will and being forcefully bonded to one of them totally f***ed him up. The fact that he didn't really care much for humans to begin with didn't help either. But as time passed, his general dislike for those humans just festered and grew inside till he just hated all humans as a race and wanted to be as far away from Earth as possible. Fueled with his hatred, he went to the Decepticon Starscream and together they put together a plan that would be mutually beneficial to both of them. He would supply the Decepticons with the means and intel to ambush the Autobots. And in this orchestrated ambush, Starscream would assassinate Megatron and the defeated Autobots would be exiled to Cybertron. To Sunstreaker, it was a win-win. Megatron would be gone and the Autobots would depart from the Earth. And while this would leave the humans at the mercy of the Decepticons, Sunstreaker just didn't care. In fact, to seal the deal, Sunstreaker had only one request. For what they did to him, he wanted the Decepticons to kill all the humans. Every single one of them. Oh, and just a reminder, Sunstreaker is an Autobot. In the end of the story arc, as usual, the Autobots are able to recover and find their way back to Earth and defeat the Decepticons. But Sunstreaker is not with them. Before their return back in Cybertron, the Autobots are attacked by a swarm of mutant Insecticon rejects. And in an attempt to redeem himself, an uncharacteristically remorseful Sunstreaker sacrifices himself by staying behind to blow up a bridge that the swarm is crossing. Unfortunately for him, in order for it all to work, he ends up blowing himself up as well. Luckily for my favorite Transformer, no comic death is really ever permanent. It turns out, Sunstreaker didn't actually die. Being a robot, he just went into a sort of stasis lock, wherein he relived his actions of betrayal on a loop in his head at the bottom of a pit buried under blown-up Insecticon scrap. Years later, he is eventually found and repaired by an ancient Autobot named Alpha Trion. It's worth noting though that for a good amount of time, he only remains partially repaired, unable to transform or use his legs, making him dependent on moving around on a hover chair. Living with this handicap definitely must have played a huge part in softening up his huge ego. He also slowly learns to care for other individuals other than himself, particularly his new loyal companion, the mutant Insecticon, Bob. No, really. Ultimately, both the reformed Sunstreaker and Bob make their way back to the Autobot ranks, where they become more effective members of the Autobot cause. So, given that I've been pretty clear with my Sunstreaker love, you would think that on the toy front, I would have a special display dedicated to my favorite Autobot, littered with numerous Sunstreaker toys. Well, no I don't, but that wouldn't be a bad idea. Anyway, as I said in the beginning, as a kid, I never did get the original vintage toy, and it was only as an adult that I got my hands on my first official Sunstreaker toy. This was way back in 2005 when I was following my then girlfriend on one of her shopping trips through the bowels of a local mall called Goldcrest that I chanced upon this toy shop. Seeing that I had nothing better to do, I decided to check it out. And then all of a sudden, there he was. Sunstreaker. Not the original vintage toy, mind you, but an updated modern version from a new toy line called Transformers Alternators. This line was geared towards older collectors, like me, and as such, featured more articulated robots that transformed into officially licensed modern cars with realistic details like full interiors and engine. Anyway, this time around, since Hasbro was unable to secure the license to produce Lamborghini toys, Sunstreaker now transformed into an equally cool Dodge Viper. This was a really decent toy for its time, but its real significance to me, aside from being Sunstreaker, is that it was actually one of the very first toys that I bought as an adult, thus opening my Pandora's box and leading me down the never-ending hole of a toy collector. Anyway, it would be 3 years later when I would get my next Sunstreaker toy. 2008 saw the release of what many consider to be one of the best modern takes for Sunstreaker, as part of Hasbro's Universe 2.0 line. What was special about this design was its engineering. If transformed in a slightly different manner, you could get a pretty decent sideswipe as well. I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, I think this was probably the first time this was ever attempted for a Transformers Sideswipe and Sunstreaker toy. I was so excited to get my hands on this one that when I first saw it in a hobby shop at a slightly higher price than retail, I didn't hesitate and scooped it up. And then, when Takara Tomy, the Japanese Transformers company, released their version sporting a slightly different shade of yellow and chrome bits, I scooped that one up too. You really can't have enough Sunstreakers, you know. So let's keep going. After the Universe version, I ended up getting 2 more retail Sunstreakers. The first came in 2015 as part of the Combiner Wars subline. To be honest, there isn't much to say about this guy, as he was basically a recolor of the Stunticon Breakdown with a new head. And as part of the whole Combiner Wars gimmick, he combined with other Autobots who were also repainted Stunticons to form Optimus Maximus. I bought him because he was Sunstreaker, but eventually I sold him off because, well, as a toy, he kinda sucked. Anyway, in 2020, we got an updated Sunny as part of the Earthrise line. While this was a definite improvement over the previous one, it was not without its faults. First, the yellow paint and plastic used mismatched all over the place. And second, in an effort to perhaps not get into any legal issues with Lamborghini, or they were just flat out lazy and cheap, they didn't include a car spoiler, which kinda just made his alt mode look incomplete. Fortunately, in the age of 3D printers, this issue was easily remedied. For all its faults though, I really do like this toy. So much so that I bought 2 more recolors based on the original Diaclone Red and Police versions of the Sunstreaker toy, who are now officially part of the Transformers canon as Spinout and Cordon, respectively. And finally, let's finish up on the Masterpiece front. When Masterpiece Sideswipe was released in 2012, I figured that it would be sooner rather than later that his more superior brother Sunstreaker would follow suit. But boy was I wrong. By 2015, with no official MP Sunstreaker in sight, I was growing extremely impatient. By this time, the third-party Transformers scene was in full swing, with not one, but 2 companies slated to release their rendition of an MP Sunstreaker at some point that year. The first option was from a yet unheard-of company called Omnigonics, with their offering called Spinout, which was the original working name for Sunstreaker back in the 80s. And the second was from a more seasoned company, Badcube, called Sunsurge. While I wasn't completely happy with either of them, based on the prototype renders, I figured I'd just get the first one that would come out, which in this case was Badcube's Sunsurge. This turned out to be quite fortunate on my part because I ended up really loving Sunsurge, who served as a perfect complement to my Masterpiece Sideswipe. As for Omnigonics' version, well, apparently that ended up going through multiple production issues, which led to numerous delays, and when it finally did come out, he was widely panned by collectors, so bullet dodged there. Anyway, a mere 2 years into my love affair with Badcube's Sunsurge, Takara finally did the unthinkable and announced an official Masterpiece Sunstreaker. And he was glorious. Easily the most anticipated toy for me that year, and that's if timing couldn't be any better. I just happened to be in the land where Transformers come out first in the world, Hong Kong, when MP39 Sunstreaker was released. What a special moment it was for me. After a scrumptious dinner of roasted Peking duck, I remember doing a late meetup on a cold December night with a fellow Filipino collector and seller based there to finally get my Masterpiece Sunstreaker. And then, getting stuck in the hotel the next day due to a bad case of indigestion and fever. Oh well, at least I had my Masterpiece Sunstreaker to keep me company. Ah, good times. When I finally did get to mess around with the guy, I was completely blown away. The car mode was gorgeous, with opening doors and pop-out headlights, and with the cool option of displaying him as a regular Countach or his more iconic modified version. And while yes, the transformation was a little bit more involved than usual, the end result was an amazingly solid and articulated robot. There was no doubt in my mind that, all biases aside, I swear, this was bar none the best Masterpiece car. Masterpiece Transformer. Best Transformer Takara has ever produced. Period. I only had one real problem with this guy. He looks so good that unlike Sunsurge, he makes his brother's Sideswipe look sorely outdated. Eventually, Takara released inevitable Diaclone recolors of MP39 for Masterpiece versions of Spinout and Cordon. I scooped up Cordon, but for Spinout, I opted to get myself Badcube's red repaint called Sentinel Blaze instead. Since truth be told, while he paled in comparison to the official Sunny, I really did like Sunsurge too. Hey, variation is a good thing. And that should wrap things up for this Sunny episode. He may not be as logically calculating as Prowl, cool and classy as Jazz, or annoyingly underdoggy like Bumblebee, but Sunstreaker will always be the number 1 Autobot for me. And okay, I admit, Sideswipe isn't that bad as well. But what about you guys? Are there any other fans of this egotistical, sociopathic, incredibly vain and arrogant good guy? Let me know in the comments below and tell me your story. Thanks for watching Stories from the Toy Shelf. If you enjoyed this story, why not check another one? And please help me out by giving me a like or comment and subscribe to the channel to get notifications whenever I upload a new story. Until the next one.